Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you very much for making the time this morning for this public hearing, and thanks, appreciation to Stacy and Sandy for all their assistance in making this possible. This public hearing is required by the regulations that are promulgated by the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development in their administration of HUD funding for the Emergency Solutions Grant, to which some of those monies have come here to Cumberland County. Currently, you all may remember that Cumberland County has received emergency solutions grants in 2018. Those grants currently expire in the spring of next year. And we just...
Hello. Hi, this is Gary.
You're in the public hearing.
Alright.
Go ahead.
Otherwise, it's not Duke County Common Systems doesn't work.
Okay, Tim.
Greetings, Commissioner. So consequently, we just were notified by the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development that there may be, and we want to emphasize, may be additional monies available to the county for to add on to the 2018 Emergency Solutions Grant. We still need to spend it by the end of the contract period. However, in our conversations with our friends at the Safe Harbor and Community Cares, they felt that these additional dollars would help strengthen their programs and allow them to provide additional assistance through the winter months, which are ahead of us. So as a result, we have started to put together an amendment, which would be for a total of $92,344. $89,007 of that would go towards emergency shelter, essential services at the shelter at Safe Harbor, and also to expand services and improve services at community cares. So we did do the proper notifications, public notifications of today's meeting, and are asking for your consideration this allowing us to submit this amendment request to the Pennsylvania Department of Community, send our friends over there in Harrisburg. That's what I was trying to get. And so consequently, with your approval, and after this public hearing today, and then with approval potentially on Monday, we will then finalize the application and submit it to DCED no later than the end of this month. We are expecting a very quick turnaround from our conversations with DCED about whether or not the funds would be awarded and to what amount those funds would be awarded, so that we can work quickly to get the contracts in place and start the money flowing to the Safe Harbor and Community Cares. So I don't know if there's any questions. Scott Schul is here from Safe Harbor this morning that could answer any questions, particulars about their part of this particular amendment request.
Board have any questions?
I'll just say that this is good news, and of course, I'm wondering as to whether or not our poking around over there as to finding out why our most recent grant wasn't approved, maybe I'll spur this consideration. But regardless, maybe it's just coincidence. But this is good news, and I'm glad to see Scott here. I saw Scott last night at the Katie holiday party, so I had a little bit of advanced knowledge on this. But Tim, this is great, and so that's $92,000 that we hopefully will have available now to assist those who need shelter and other services, here in our county. So this is good news. I'm glad to hear this.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Staff have any?
No, I don't have any questions, but I have a comment. I'll just echo what Jim said.
Go ahead.
I'm very curious regarding the poking around. The truth of the matter is, it shouldn't be required that we have to do that.
That's right. I agree.
We agree as well, so.
Staff have any questions? Anybody in the audience have any questions, comments? Okay. Tim, was there anyone else to speak for your
At this time, we
All right.
know you have a full agenda. So.
All right. Hearing that, then public hearing is closed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the December 12th, 2019 Cumberland County Commissioners Workshop meeting. Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance by saying, I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Call this meeting to order at 9:05 a.m. At this time, open up the floor to public comment. Okay, hearing none, seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 3, and I'll call on Commissioner DeFilippo to present Luann Nickel with an award for 25 years of service to Cumberland County. Luann, Susan, and Annie, please come forward.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And
We are celebrating Luann's 30 years of service with the county. She was hired in November of 1989 as Department Clerk 2 in the MHIDD area and had a title change in July 15 to Administrative Clerk. Luann, congratulations and thank you for many years of service. Anybody else have anything you want to add?
Well, 30 years. We were sort of joking around with Luann this morning that we would have to check the child labor laws on that. She said, no, that's true. She said, no, that's true. But anyway, Luann is one of the first people that anybody that calls her office comes in contact with, and she's very positive and delightful to talk to and spends a lot of time talking with the consumers and their families and helping them out. So she's always there to help anybody who needs help, whether it be the consumers that call in, the families, the staff. And we certainly do appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
We did not compare notes. And actually, as we were getting ready to come over, I said to Luann, I said, wow, what a legacy, 30 years, that's incredible. Just an incredible length of service. And I absolutely agree with what Sue said. Luann has always been very positive, very supportive, very upbeat. And you know what? She isn't easily rattled. You know, and oftentimes we get those crisis calls and people upset and angry about things that aren't happening in the timeline that they would appreciate. And I think one of the most valuable assets is Luann's personality. It's just so even, and she's very even-tempered, and that helps automatically cool a very sometimes difficult situation. So we so appreciate Luann's service as well as her demeanor. And, you know, she's just a great lady, and we value her work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get to squish.
A bit more. Nice beard. Look like you're 19.
I got everyone while they smile.
That's all right, Ben. When they teach you, you know you're part of the team, right?
Thank you, ladies.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 4. And if you will recall, Commissioners, there were some issues regarding the delays in the implementation of the county's community development block grant program. Tim was requested by Virginia Sardone, for the acting deputy assistant secretary of the grant program from HUD, to prepare information of why we had that delay. Tim responded and prepared that letter for your signature. So we prepared that letter, you signed it. It was sent out because it was due by December the 10th before 5 p.m. And so today I am requesting the BOC to affirm approval of the letter dated December the 9th, 2019 to U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which was sent out regarding the timely expenditure requirements for the CDBG program.
motion to approve the letter.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to retroactively affirm approval of the letter dated December 9, 2019. Correspondence as described by our chief clerk.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Yep.
Next, agenda item 5, Rebecca Yerrick will be discussing a loan request for Delicia Bakery and Restaurant. Rebecca?
Good morning, everyone. On November 19th, the Board of Commissioners unanimously and enthusiastically approved financing $70,000 for Delicia Bakery and Restaurant. This is the business, the Harrisburg business that will be purchasing a property in downtown Mechanicsburg to relocate and expand and reopen. As part of that request, I noted that we were going to be submitting a request to the Cumberland Valley Visitors Bureau for up to a $40,000 tourism grant. And they have subsequently asked for a letter of financial commitment, in addition to minutes from the meeting, which I have. We're supplying this for the other lenders as well. Never been requested. I'm usually the one, I'm always the one packaging the financing, so I'm not asking myself to provide a letter. But this is a new request. I understand that the commissioners thought my letter of commitment was a little enthusiastic, I'll say, imagine that, and wanted something a little more straightforward. So I've provided an abridged letter to the one I initially submitted, and as well, thought it might be just a good measure while we're here to ask for a generic to whom it might concern letter as well. So they're not letters of support, they're letters of financial commitment. Terms will be attached to those letters.
Okay. So,
Rebecca, I have a question here.
Yes.
The question is the financing changing in any way from what was presented to us, or is it just a new procedure?
No. And as part of the briefing, I noted that the Community First Fund loan could be reduced by a tourism grant if approved. And that remains the case.
Okay, so is this going to be the new procedure for now? We have to provide this letter on a regular basis?
Well, I think this is the first time I've been asked this in 12 years, but I think that would be a good measure, just to take care of everything all at once.
Okay, but these letters will be expected in the future. We're just going to have a generic one.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
and if I'm reading this correctly, essentially is KDIC is asking for information that along the lines that we have approved the funding of the Community Development Block Grant Program for a loan. Is that right? So they
Correct.
just want to know, as they consider this grant request,
Yes.
right,
And
that this other financing has been approved by the board.
correct. And I'm getting the same letters from Mechanicsburg Borough and Community First Fund, the other two lenders.
Good. I'm-
And then-
Keith, do you have any concerns with this?
I don't think I've seen it. 5 minutes.
Or we can make it, pass it on contingent of their
That'd be fine.
review, so. Well, we don't need to do that till Monday.
The loan is all approved. This is simply letter of commitment. for the
Right,
financing.
understood. So good that our solicitor gets to see it before we act on it, and act on it on Monday.
Let me just ask one additional question if I might. So what size of a grant are you looking for from the tourism company from Katy? What's the size and what are those funds going to be used for?
The maximum loan is the maximum grant is $40,000.
Okay.
Based on their financials, it looks like, if approved, it would be a maximum of around $33,000, and it would be used specifically for equipment.
Equipment purchases?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioners?
Oh,
Okay, we'll
Thanks,
move-
Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca. We'll move on to agenda item 6, and I will discuss the letter of support for the 3P Ride Veterans Trust Fund grant application. Commissioners, please note that this is an action requested item for today. because it is due Friday, December 13th, which will be tomorrow. Street Heat Ride is a nonprofit organization created by Rapid Transit, and they're seeking non-traditional funding to support regional mobility services. They previously sought and were awarded state funds to create a veterans transportation program in the region. The program was created to address access to medical services and has been very successful. The 3P Ride is now hoping to expand the veterans transportation program to address access to employment. They would provide one-time passes for job interviews and monthly passes on a temporary basis so veterans can seek and keep jobs. So they would like you to support this. They would like to request this letter of support from the VOC.
Does the board have any questions? Otherwise, we have a motion to support.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to support the grant request of 3P Ride, which is a nonprofit connected to Rapid Transit.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yep.
Okay, next we move on to agenda item 7, and I will call on Tim again to discuss the ESG 2018 amendment, request authorization in the event anyone has any other additional questions. If everybody's good, we can move on.
Yeah.
You good?
We'll see you Monday.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Agenda item 8, Dana will be discussing the 2019 budget adjustment. Dana?
Good morning. The healthcare self-insurance fund is requesting to increase expenses by $500,000. Because our accounting software has a budget edit check, we need to assure that we have enough budget in the account for each claim and the IBNR, and we're not necessarily expecting that we're going to need the $500,000, but we need to assure that we have enough budget in there at the end of the year for the last claim payment and the accrual at year end.
Any questions for Dana?
No.
Thank you, Dana. Next, we move on to agenda item number 9, contracts and grants, and I will turn it over to Stacy.
Morning, Commissioners. Morning, everyone. Agenda items 9, 1A through F are existing contracts, contract extensions, or addenda with no additional cost or increase to the county. They are as follows. Children and Youth Services, Bethany Home Incorporated, CNRC, PA Health and Wellness Incorporated, Robbins Nest Avery's Corporation, communications contract for Carolyn Siebert Drager, which is an addendum with a 6-month extension. Human Resources, Wellness at Work, Partnership for Better Health, Liquid Fuels and Finance, Kunkel Bridge extension request, and Sample Bridge extension request, and the Treasurer's Office for the PA Game Commission. Commissioners, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding any of the above mentioned agreements?
No.
I would like to note that the PA Health and Wellness Incorporated is action requested, and we received notice of that this morning. Any questions about? Move on to agenda item 9.2.
I think we'll have to make a motion.
Sorry. Is there a motion to make PA Health and Wellness Incorporated action requested today?
I move for approval.
Why is a motion even necessary?
There has been some numerous back and forth changes, and it is effective January 1st, 2020, and so they're hoping to get it completed today to get that submitted.
And this is the last workshop for the year, so.
But this is an existing, we have an existing contract with these. Why keep them confused?
It's just an amendment to the contract.
To the contract. All right, understood. Thank you. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion
Aye.
carries.
Commissioners, on item
Yeah.
F, that same That document is just being approved by you, will be executed by the treasurers, I think the new treasurer.
Okay. Canadian Commission, right, all right, thank you.
Next, we'll move on to agenda item number 9.2, which consists of new contracts, vendors, services, grants, and contracts with increases or decreases to the county. I'll begin by calling on Bethany Salzarulo to discuss the Department of State GEMS program grant. Bethany?
Good morning, Commissioners. This is for the voting machine funding. They're calling it the GEMS program, Grants for Election Modernization and Security. This is just for that 60% for the voting machine funding.
This is the grant from the state then?
Yes.
Next, I'll call on Jamie Reber to discuss the 5 contracts and agreements for children and youth services.
Good morning, Commissioners. The first contract is for Clear Vision Residential Services. This is a brand new provider for our county. Probation has requested to actually use this program, but they accept both dependent and delinquent adolescent females, which is a population that we do need more services for. Their program rates are well within the maximum allowable and comparable to other like programs. The next contract is for United Methodist Home for Children, their purchase of service agreement. This is for their residential programs. They are asking for a 3% increase across the board in those programs. The next one is the United Methodist Home for Children Professional Services contract. This is for our independent living program. The only increase to this contract is the mileage reimbursement rate. The next contract is for the Milton S. Hershey Medical Center. They have a team that reviews our child abuse records to give a determination to ensure that we are making the correct decision on CPS cases. They are requesting a 2.5% increase on their record review. And the final contract is for the Devereaux Foundation. They are requesting 3% increases on most of their programs, and one program a 7.34 increase. They're all still comparable to other like programs, and we typically only use this program for very difficult to please children.
Melissa Cavanelli will be discussing the Paperless Solutions Incorporated contract addendum for clerk of courts and parliamentary, and then we'll move down to agenda item 8 to discuss the Pitney Bowes contract for MJ Sanderson.
Thank you. This is actually a clerk of courts contract, but it benefits court administration. This is the workflow system that allows us to process filings without actually moving the paper. We process them through an electronic system. These are just some enhancements to the program that after using it for a little while, we realized there's a few things that would really make it work better. For instance, the one enhancement is the workflow program allows us to make notes as we go along with a document. If it's moved from one judge to another, or a judge wants somebody to do something else, they can pass it back and forth with those almost electronic sticky notes. What happens currently is those basically disappear once the document has been processed. We don't have that electronic record. One of these is creating an archive for those notes that we will be able to access going forward. That's a sample of the kind of thing that we're adding. Another is to add a place for us to put memos and correspondence and attach those to the docket, so that's all in one place as well. These will be paid out of the prothonotary and clerk of courts records improvement fund, so it's no effect on the general fund.
Melissa, do you know how much this additional?
The 3 change requests are the total of $2,000.
Okay.
And it's one-time costs, they're not ongoing.
Thank you. It's being paid out of record improvement funds.
Yeah.
I have no questions.
The second is a mail stamp machine for MDJ Sanderson's office. They did not previously have one. Most of the other MDJ offices have one. This will help streamline postage and stuff going out. All the other, like I said, most of the other MDJ offices already have one. Just they previously did not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Melissa Smith is joining us by video teleconference to discuss the Pacific Health Nursing 10 agency contract. Melissa?
Good morning, Commissioners. This is an existing contract with Pacific Health, which is a temporary agency that provides RNs, LPNs, and CNAs. They are requesting an increase in their rates overall of about 5%. And it is in line with what we currently pay other agencies. So, do you have any questions?
What does that equate to approximately in dollars?
In dollars? That it depends how often we use them. The most use that we do with Pacific Health is for CNAs, and it's about $1 an hour increase. They're not one of our heavily used companies.
Thanks, Melissa. Next, I'll call
Thank you.
Laurel Alshon to discuss the PA Association of Conservation Districts grant.
Good morning. The Conservation District is seeking approval to apply for a $1,500 grant from our state association, the Pennsylvania Association of Conservation Districts. The grant will help the district update our strategic plan that we first wrote 10 years ago. So we felt it was important to look at this 10 years later to see if we need to do any updates. My board of directors approved this on Tuesday, and there's no matching funds needed.
Paul Blensky is here to discuss the Kennedy Addiction Recovery Center contract.
Good morning. Seeking approval for a new contract with Kennedy Addiction Recovery to provide basic housing services for participants in our specialty course. These are people that are generally re-entering from jail or from inpatient treatment, and one of the biggest barriers to their success is housing, food, transportation, and basic needs. And we've been using Kennedy as in a vendor status, but we need to formalize that relationship with this contract.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
How much housing is being made available here? I mean, how
We-
many individuals are expected to be, I guess, I don't know, served is the right answer, but in the sense that
OIC tends to have the greatest number of people, the majority of them, because most of them are coming directly out of jail. They don't, of course, have no means available. We generally, so we seek other forms of support first, either through a CADHC grant or from the Sherman Foundation, or if they can pay, or relatives. So we pay as a last resort. We normally do a period of 4 to 6 weeks, just enough time to kind of get them on their feet, and start looking for a job, and then where they can pay on their own. I can't really toss a number out.
Okay. All right, well, it says here $150 a week. What are we talking about? $150 a week.
So in terms of how...
Is that for an individual?
Correct, per person, per week. Yes. So on average, we use several recovery houses. The cheapest one runs $125 a week. Kennedy runs $150, but they also provide the greatest amount of ancillary services for one of them.
Well, that's not expensive at all. I think that's pretty good. Right. This is good. Thank you.
Next, I'll call on Ryan Simon to discuss the Geisinger Holy Spirit contract addendum. Ryan.
Good morning, Commissioners. As part of our normal budget review process, we determined that our funding for the state compulsive and problem gambling funds that we get from the state every year would be better spent if we move some more of that over to some of the programs that Geisinger does for us. And so that's what we're asking. Any questions? Thank you.
We've already discussed agenda item H, so next I'll ask Sue Cardwell to discuss the 6 contracts for MHABD.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. The contracts for early intervention, let me see, we'll start with United Cerebral Palsy is an increase of $48,207 for additional services that we authorize for the children. The building blocks therapy is an increase of $44,802 for additional services that were authorized. Pediatric therapy specialists of South Central Pennsylvania is an increase of $46,450 for additional services for the children. And Behavior by Design is a new provider, and we're starting a contract at $5,000, and they will be providing special instruction. All the money for these contracts comes from state dollars. Now for the intellectual and developmental disabilities, the Susquehanna software, it's an increase of $3,250 for support of our WAVE tracker for early intervention and IDD, which we use to pay our bills. And for mental health, Susquehanna software, it's an increase of $9,500 for maintenance support of the CPO lab. Any questions?
Next, Kirk Stoner has several contracts for discussion today, beginning with agenda item J, the Central PA Conservancy contract, followed by agenda item K, the DEP grant, which is an action requested item, followed by agenda item 11, which is discussion for authorization to advertise for Sample Bridge and bid schedule.
Sure, Commissioners, first item is land partnerships agreement with Central Pennsylvania Conservancy. It's for $12,000 for a land plan for the Woodport Spring Garden Preserve, which is public land that we had actually assisted in securing with CPC at the headwaters of the Woodport Spring Garden.
That is a gem of the absolute place. If anybody hasn't been there yet, highly advise you to take a trip to that place.
Any questions on that? Okay, second piece then would be the proposal that we had provided the board for a grant from DEP. So, as you're aware, we're working with DEP on the Phase 3 watershed improvement plan for the county. So, in simple terms, what that plan is EPA has put water quality improvement requirements upon DEP to meet by 2025. So DEP has taken those water quality requirements and then kind of allocated them out through the counties. They prioritize the counties to try and get those counties where the most opportunity is for pollutant reduction requirements are located. Cumberland County has been identified as one of the top priorities, so we're one of what they call the pilot counties that are following the process. So Carl, some of the others were what, Franklin,
Adams, Lancaster.
They were the first 3 to go through the program, so we're up next. And what we're doing through the process is really looking at best management practices in the county that can be installed on our agricultural properties, but also in our urbanized areas to reduce nitrogen and phosphorus loading to the Chesapeake Bay. So the goal is 2.2 million pounds of nitrogen by 2025. That's a big goal. On the phosphorus side, it's only about 40,000 pounds. That is not much of a concern. But DEP is working back through the counties, wanting us to help organize local initiatives to reduce those pollution loading requirements. And we're not required to do this. I mean, DEP has worked with us, and look, counties aren't responsible for this, municipalities aren't responsible for this, but we believe that there needs to be a coordination effort at the county level to make this happen. So Carl and I from the Planning Department and the Conservation District have been working with DEP to lead this effort, to get this effort started. We noted that it's going to be a tall task and that resources are needed for implementation. DEP came back and said, we also recognize there will be some resources needed for the planning process itself and monitoring and implementing what we do. In early November, they sent us a note indicating, hey, you can hire somebody. You know, they laid out all the guidelines of we can hire a staff person. Carl and I discussed that, didn't believe that was the best approach. Hiring somebody for a 3 to 5 year period, hiring somebody, getting the right person on board to be able to do these complex tasks of working with landowners, identifying BMPs and working through the process, likely what's going to happen through a hire. So what we proposed back to DEP just last week was to hire a consultant that would help us through the planning efforts. And that was the request for proposal that I sent up to the board. I apologize, that was a little late, but again, working with DEP, we just got the answers on this grant last week. So the RFP really reflects kind of the scope of work that we'd like to pursue through this grant. It's $100,000 a year for 3 to 5 years. 3 years has been obligated, years 4 and 5 are optional at this point. But our intent would be to hire a consultant to assist us in the planning effort. I believe, between Carl and I, out with our shops, we'll be able to help support the consultant, work with our municipalities, our farmers, to identify interest, to come up with a plan that's feasible, but also practical. I think we've had discussions that 2.2 million pounds of nitrogen is a tall task. You look at cost-effective BMPs, I think we're talking anywhere between $1.6 and $6.6 million to achieve that. Working with our consultant, I think we can develop that plan that's feasible and practical. It may not be 2.2 million pounds of nitrogen, but it'll be something that we can put back to DEP and say, this is what we believe we can achieve in Cumberland County. Without the resources of the consultant, I think between Carl and I and our shops, we don't have the technical expertise or the time available to do this. So I think if we don't pursue the grant application, the message back to DEP is that we're not interested in this, we're not able to help with the phase 3 WIP. And I think then there could be other implications with our working relationship with DEP and other grants that we receive for activities that we do, mainly through Carl's shop, but also through our shop as well. So I'd be glad to answer any question. That's kind of a quick overview of what we're looking at. The scope of work that I provided to you gives you a little more detail of what we're thinking for that grant with DEP.
I do have some questions. Okay, so these other counties that have gone before us are, how much of a head start do they have, Franklin and these other counties? So
They got a year, I think last year is when they completed their plans.
do we have any indications from them on whether what's being asked is achievable? Are they making good progress, or are we spinning the wind on this? Or
I know Franklin County, the goals that they had set for Franklin said in the time period that they're not achievable. So they, in their plan that they put together, they put down what they thought was realistic to achieve by 2025.
okay, do we have any inkling of how far off the numbers that are?
I think they were maybe at 60% or something like that they said they maybe could achieve by 2025 of what their goals were for the county.
Franklin?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we know anything about any of the other counties?
I don't know the details of the other ones.
Okay.
But I do know hearing them speak that they think the goals are not going to be achieved unless the resources come from the state or federal for implementing of the BMP.
Yeah,
so that's key.
That leads to my next question, which is, I absolutely agree we need to pursue this is the logical first step, but these BMPs aren't implemented free. So is that the money we're seeking? And if that money isn't forthcoming, what happens to these recommendations that we get out of the BMPs?
I think the assumption is we use the grant to identify and engineer the BMPs to get them ready. The resources have to come from existing resources through DEP and other organizations that are out there. There's a lot of other nonprofits, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, that have dollars for these types of activities. I think through the consulting contract we have here, grant writing is going to be one of the key tasks that we ask the consultant to help run down some of those additional resources. The county is not on the hook for funding that plan. So if the resources don't come back to us through all those other sources, no one's looking to the county and say, hey, ante up and make this stuff happen.
Yeah, at least let's hope it doesn't come to that. So when the consultant does their work, is that going to give us an inkling of how achievable the goal is? Is that going to be one of the?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's, in the RFP, we kept using the words feasible and practical. So we get to the end, I think that's the message we communicate back to DEP. This is what we believe is practical. This is what we think we can pursue. If it doesn't meet their goal, that's, in my opinion, that's their problem. I mean, they've assigned the goals down to us, but we're telling them what's practical, what we can do based upon the resources that are allocated now. If they want the full goal achieved, they need to provide us more resources.
Right.
Are you, as part of the planning effort of the county, though, are you going to, if we go to the consultant, are they going to be identifying what is needed to meet the target, the 2025 targets?
Yes.
In other words, you're going to put together, here's the most practical, cost-effective, based on current resources, but this is what we need to complete, though. Is that going to be part of the consultant's plan? Okay.
I think that's what we just asked, but I asked, is that going to show us what the percentage is? You mentioned Franklin says they can do 6, so that now one of the deliverables will be we have some inkling of roughly how close we can get to that goal. the major deliverable.
Right. Yes, the consultant will work with us, we'll look at certain areas, we already have some water quality data throughout the county, identify some hot spots, in those hot spots, what BMPs can we do? If we do those BMPs, what are the nitrogen and phosphorus reductions we can see from certain BMPs?
I guess the only question I have left is, since these other counties have a year head start on it, I assume you're regular contacts in Franklin on this, so it'll be very interesting to see what DEP's response is to their assertion that, hey, this is all we can get. We get maybe 60% of what you're. So, because Kirk, you work with DEP long enough to know they're not the most responsive partner to work with. So it'll be very interesting to see how they react to a number that's that far off of their single time.
We are fortunate, Elizabeth Grant is new hire in the planning office. She managed the WIP for Franklin County, so that's why we have a lot of insight into what's going on. And she has some good contacts then with DEP of how this works. So I think the key message for us is going back to saying, hey, you ask us to do this, we're willing to do this, but we're also not responsible. You've told us that time and time again in all the presentations. Our municipal partners as well are saying, you're not responsible. So I believe that we're doing DEP a favor by working through this process, trying to do the best we can to help achieve their water quality goals. At the end of the day, our message with locally though is let's improve local water quality. If we improve local water quality, it works to improve the day as well.
The one thing that makes it almost unrealistic is they want us to decrease nitrogen levels more in the next 5 years than what couldn't even be achieved in the last 17 years or 18 years. So
that's what easy gains were got.
Yeah.
Well, don't get me started on that. But I mean, that's been the problem from the get-go. First of all, the upgrades to our sewage treatment plants, which cost $1.6 billion up and down the Susquehanna River, cost the local ratepayers $1.6 billion, had a negligible impact in terms of reducing phosphorus and nitrogen pollution. And of course, we were the easy targets at the local municipal level because we're regulated, and we're point sources. So, if they would have concentrated initially on BMPs, best management farms and so forth, and expended that kind of money, maybe we'd be somewhere. But I shared a copy of the resolution that this board passed 5 years ago that we sent to all of our legislators and so forth. I was going through some stuff. And essentially, the bottom line on our resolution was, we all support a clean environment. We all want to make sure our streams and our rivers are clean. But at the same time, when you're talking about the Chesapeake Bay, when this was initially proposed back in the early 80s, we started to talk about it. The concept is that there was supposed to be a federal financing authority established. 80% of the cost, throughout the whole Chesapeake Bay tributary was supposed to be picked up by the federal government because this is Chesapeake Bay is a major driver of the Mid-Atlantic region and a national treasure. Well, we got like next to nothing from the federal government. Nobody in Congress introduced the necessary legislation. And it's like now with the rain taxes and everything else we've got, it all comes down to the locals in terms of having to fund everything. All the governors over different administrations going back, again, to the early 80s, they all get together with the other governors and neighboring states that get their picture taken, we're going to clean up the Chesapeake Bay, right? And then nothing happens. The resources aren't provided. So, in terms of this planning effort, it's good to, try to do what we can do. Okay? But the message needs to be loud and clear because they were talking, by 2025? We've got to come up with $2.5 billion to implement what they expect. Where's that coming from? Where's it coming from? So we can do all the planning we want to and try to come up with solutions, but until they come up with the resources, we're wasting a lot of time. Now, one good thing, and I mentioned this, I think at the Conservation District Board meeting just this past week, one good thing is that hopefully through this process, we will be able to identify best management practices that have already occurred here in Cumberland County that we're not getting credit for in some computer in a bureaucrat's office at the EPA, okay? Because this is all based on a model, but I don't know how much actual real data they have. So, that's the one good thing I think that came out of this. But in any event, the only question I had on the consultant and the 100,000 a year and so forth, since Elizabeth's already expending a good bit of time in terms of providing for coordination, is there any way that, we could defray some of our expenses, for what she's already doing with the grant from the state, or you think we should just continue on? I'm just throwing that out there. You mentioned, Kirk, that we're involved in a bunch of other stuff. I know Coral Conservation District's involved in a bunch of, is that an option? In other words, that we accept some of this to provide for, some of the funding to provide for the coordination of what Elizabeth's already doing?
There's administrative costs are allowed by the grant, but in my opinion, I think the work that we're doing falls in to what we should be doing. As a county planning organization and as a county conservation district, we have staff on board that are able to do it. I don't think providing additional administrative funding creates any more time in the day for someone to work on some of this stuff. So I don't know. I think we're already doing it. I don't see that it's going to be a huge workload, especially with the consulting agreement. I think it puts us more in a management role and less so in a development role that we would be without people.
And you're saying we may need some particular expertise too?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right. Okay, sounds good to me.
I think the plan's fine, Kurt, but, and using a consultant makes a lot of sense for this particular issue. And that old expression, be careful what you ask for, I think DEP, once we supply them the information they're asking for, will be an eye-opener to them. So
DEP liked the idea of consulting, and I talked about the first year being a lot of planning, and then maybe year 2 and 3, we are actually implementing. They could do a lot of the inventory and evaluation out on sites and one design work. So it could shift from year 1, shift over to 2 and 3, maybe more field work implementation.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions?
So we weren't looking for action on that today.
Yeah.
The application is due tomorrow. It's an electronic application.
Sorry, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application for the $100,000 a year from the state over the next 3 to 5 years. Is that what you're talking about? To help support the planning effort for phase 3 of the watershed, what do we call it, watershed improvement.
Implementation.
Yeah, with a whip.
Thank you for the motions or seconds. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Kurt.
The last item then, Sample Bridge, our let schedule for that. So seeing a lot of activity today. We opened bids for Wolf Bridge. Sample Bridge is next in line, so we have authorization to advertise on for today. Keith reviewed that. We're ready to get that out. We will be awarding bids for that then in February. In another couple of weeks, we'll be bringing you authorization to advertise for Cumberland Bridge as well. So you see a lot of our work with the capital improvement plan is coming out right now. I think 2020 is going to be a very busy year for us to see a lot of results.
Yes, good.
I can't wait to drive across Wolf Bridge.
Looks like it's here.
It's got there.
We're going to let you first.
You can come back to.
Invite me back for that one. I like it.
So we've already discussed agenda item K, so next I'll ask Holly Sherman to discuss the CR 6-month contract extension. Holly.
Good morning, Commissioners. This contract is for the chaplain services at the prison and the nursing home. Myself, the warden, and the administrator of the nursing home have been in discussions with the Carlisle Area Religious Council since earlier this summer about the various services that are provided by the chaplains, and we're trying to just put some better terms to that. So in an effort to continue working on that, we would like to request an extension to the current contract, which expires at the end of this year, a 6-month extension to allow us to continue to work out the terms to make sure that everybody's kind of fulfilling their roles and responsibilities. But they did ask for a 3% increase on the salary line item, as well as a $500 administration fee.
Wait a second. So we're extending the contract, but
So the current contract that's in place is very vague. And we want to make sure that this scope of work, we would like to detail that out a little bit more, but we don't have the specifics at this time. So we need to keep the chaplains in place at both facilities. So we'd like to keep what's been in place for many, many years for another 6 months while we get some more details worked out.
I'm just, the idea of a pay raise as part of the extension.
They had a set amount for some time.
Yeah.
And for this extension, they've requested a 3% increase for a 6-month period and an additional $500 administration fee, which is another component of the existing agreement. So really, it's an extension of the increase.
Over annualized, it comes out to an increase of about $2,230.
Thanks, Colin. Claudia is joining us by video teleconference to discuss the Navy Region Mid-Atlantic MOU. Claudia?
Good morning, everybody. Public Safety is seeking your approval of an amended Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, between our department and the Navy Region Mid-Atlantic. The Department of the Navy has regionalized all of their emergency services dispatching services at all the Navy facilities. That results in landline 911 calls being routed directly to the Regional Dispatch Center, the RDC, in Norfolk, Virginia. In terms of Cumberland County specifically, that includes the Naval Support Activity, NSA, Mechanicsburg facility. The challenge with the MOU that you previously saw was that for the cellular calls that were made from the depot, they would naturally be routed to our communication center. And according to the way the MOU was originally written, that meant that we should transfer that caller to their RDC without processing. So in order to ensure no delay in emergency services to the caller in Cumberland County, we had the MOU amended to allow our staff to receive those cellular calls, process the information, dispatch emergency services, and then simultaneously courtesy notify the RDC of the event. Additionally, since all landlines go from the NSA directly to their regional dispatch center now, it was also included in the MOU that the Navy RDC will maintain all required Pennsylvania PSAP certification requirements that are set forth by PEMA, the Bureau of 911, the PA 911 Advisory Board, and/or Act 17 of 2019, so that we can ensure all visitors and residents and guests of the Navy Depot get the same service as any other county resident. The solicitor did review this MOU, and we're just looking for your approval. Any questions?
No, I just want to commend the public safety, our public safety staff, yourself and Director Shively, for working through this to make sure that, emergency response is not delayed, by this reroute, to the Navy folks. So it sounds like we've worked that out, and, that's the most important thing. If there's an emergency on base, the first responders should get the call as soon as possible. There shouldn't be any delays.
Right.
Transfer to Virginia. So that's good.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Claudia.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Danny Austin is here to discuss PADMVA grant, and Danny has a PowerPoint presentation, which is agenda item 10, as part of the Veterans Customer discussion.
Morning, Commissioner. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. So this is involved regarding the grant that my predecessor had already been approved, and just reviewing it. So her previous efforts, we'll talk a little bit about it here. She was kind of really creating a new program, and it was, in my opinion, it was potentially pulling resources from other organizations that already have these things. She was going to hire the position that would basically do a lot of planning events and coordinate events, and she had assistance money set aside of around $11,000. Trouble is with like 22,000 events, that doesn't go very far. So the feeling is that the money that was previously intended for that emergency fund, I think I could better utilize that to educate veterans on what already is available in the communities. Her plan relied heavily on donations to fund the future events and emergency funds. And if those donations weren't found or revenue stream folders, that'd be something that would have to, be supplied through the county. So while all this is happening, the state has developed something they call PA Vet Connect. General Weller's heading this up. They've divided the state into 5 regions. Cumberland County is Region 3, and each region has this regional program outreach coordinator. It uses a database to display resources that's available in whatever county we're researching. The program is almost completed. It's in the final stages of their beta test. So they're working out some kinks yet, but just an example, it has already identified 72 resources in Cumberland County that provide assistance on some level or another. So in trying to piggyback off of what their efforts are, we tentatively want to call our project PA Vet Connect of Cumberland County. We did petition or request from the state, the DMVA, that we can use that name with our efforts. That's in an approval process right now, so it's kind of a working title at this point. But as I said, 72 dozens of organizations already exist in the county to offer assistance, both monetarily, physical, numerous things. But these groups often do a poor job of communicating, even in the same organization, between posts. They don't know what the other post does. And most of that is because, and I'll use the Legion because I'm most familiar with them, as long as a post is following their bylaws, they have no oversight. So they are its own independent fiefdom, if you will. And there's a lot of money and resources at each post, some posts, that is every year going unused. So by creating the PA Vet Connect, we can combine and coordinate efforts more efficiently within the county and allow us to easier utilize the efforts being done by the state to promote outreach within the county. The Region 3 point of contact is Samantha Crossman. We've met several times already. She's going to participate in this effort, attend meetings, assist us where she can. An added benefit is it kind of allows our office to better serve the community and direct efforts from our office versus sometimes offices tend to become more of a switchboard. We say, hey, here's the resource, call them, and so on. But as they contact us, we want to be more, we don't want to let them go until they've been handed off to somebody that's going to help them. We don't want them to be having to seek that on their own, if possible. Typically is what happens if we do that. They're going to come back. And then we have to deal with them over and over again before we get them the help they need. So it's just more efficient. Our goal would be to have a representative from each of these organizations that want to participate. We'll meet periodically, maybe quarterly, to discuss progress, what we can do better, areas that are underserved, we need to hit a little harder. Another plan is to hold periodic town hall meetings as part of this education process of the veterans. We're going to involve the VSO posts, state representatives, PADMVAs involved. I want to rotate through the different areas of the county. The first one's going to be in Hampton Township. Senator Mike Regan's office is involved. Can't remember the rep up there. Greg Rothman, he's involved. The American Legion's on board. DMVA is going to have their support band down. There's just a lot of people who want to be a part of that. And that would be kind of our kickoff, if you will. And I discussed this position Amber was going to have to coordinate these, or not coordinate, but kind of set up these events and whatnot. The groups, they already are good at this, especially like the representative's office. They can pull these things off quick, and really that puts us more in a support role. And from the grant, we have a little bit of funding available that we can direct towards supporting the event, but they're gonna do the setup and, you know, and all that. So we have outreach visits planned in several of the outlying communities. I have one down in Boiling Spring that Representative Tornecker's office. We're gonna have one in Newville at the American Legion. I'm working with East Penborough Township. They have one at their township building. So we just want to get to the, you know, peripheral areas of the county. The American Legion is already at the, you know, there's one in Williamsburg. They already meet in Shippensburg at Representative Mark Keller's office. So that's going to really push our services out away from town, while we still have somebody here in town to do things. So that takes us back to the grant. I met with the grant team to discuss the current status and lack of forward progress, because up until now we haven't spent a dime. But some dates have come and gone from what were proposed. So while we cannot terminate our side of the grant, they can terminate their side. And so I said that's, you know, that would be an option, and then we could reapply. Well, I kind of knew how that answer was going to be. They don't want that money back, because then they have to talk about why they took it back. So they have agreed to allow us to amend the grant and will give us an extension. And then at the end of the 2021 cycle, we could reapply for the 2022 cycle. And that's kind of where we're at.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think you're focusing in the right direction, Dan. I think that sounds great. The grant was for how much again?
20,000.
20,000. So, you know, are you in the process then of coming up with an amendment to?
Yeah, and I apologize. I guess I thought I had sent that out, but I probably did not. But yeah, I did write an amendment, and I can get that to you when I get back to the office, no problem.
Yeah, I think it's great in terms of trying to do what we can to coordinate everything that's out there already, you know, as opposed to trying to recreate the wheel. So
Yeah, I agree. Now, you know, just an example, one post I was familiar with, it's not in this county, but it had a little over $80,000 at the end of the year in the Small Games of Chance Fund, which they have to pay out. So they came to, they've gone to the DMVA, they went to Legion headquarters, like, you know, we can give this money to somebody. So that's money that you really can take advantage of.
it's good that you're collaborating with, you know, the legislators and also with the other entities, you know, that are involved. And that, you know, and that's because you're the central point, right? So hopefully when our vets need help, they can contact you and, you know, we can, you know, essentially point them in the right direction or, you know, provide them more, better information of what.
Right. And I think the handoff is going to be important so that they're, you know, somebody's got control of them now instead of just call them.
Yeah, sounds good.
So do I need an approval so I can submit the grant amendment? I don't really.
When's it due? They approve on Monday.
Oh, Monday's great. And when I get back to the office, I'll send the
amendment,
the written portion in there.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Danny. Sandy, that's all I have.
Okay. So we already covered agenda item 10 and 11. Agenda item 12 is discussion of MHRDD assisted outpatient legislation opt-out. And I'll call on Annie and Colin.
Good morning, Commissioners. Back in April, I had attended a meeting and presented the AOT assisted outpatient treatment legislation that was to be implemented, or was implemented in April. And each of the counties was also given the opportunity to opt out of implementing that legislation. Basically, a recap is that it amended and expanded some of the outpatient commitment laws that are found in the Mental Health Procedures Act. And our county had determined, our counties, Cumberland and Perry, had determined that it was not needed in our county and was not an opportune time to try to implement that service. We already have an existing outpatient treatment outpatient commitment process for involuntary outpatient commitments, where our case managers monitor those commitments on a bi-weekly basis. We currently have about 17 folks on outpatient commitments, and have case managers and providers within the county that are working with those folks on a regular basis. We have a pretty good handle on that. Some of the other counties in the state did not follow those processes and didn't have something similar in place, but we felt we really have a good handle on those folks that are on outpatient commitment and being able to support folks in the recovery using the services that are in place. So since April, we've had some discussions internally as well as with our providers, as well as another state presentation that occurred in November, I believe it was. Again, reiterating what the law says and what our opportunities are there. There is an extensive amount of paperwork required by the assisted outpatient treatment legislation, meaning by the providers themselves and as well as the court process that's involved. And so our discussion with both internally as well as with our MHID board has been that we are not interested in pursuing implementation again at this time. So part of the legislation, like I said, is an annual opt-out that we need to submit a form to the state stating why we intend to opt out. There are no other counties in the state that have implemented AOT at this point, so it has not been implemented anywhere that we could kind of use as an example or see what's happening. We did learn of a training that Ohio was having regarding AOT, and that is something that we might look into in future months to be able to at least gather some additional information on how it might be implemented in other states. But at this point, there's no one in the state that has implemented it, and we're feeling that it's needing to be opted out for this coming year as well. So each year we do have to submit a form to the state that our administrator, Andy Stride, signs saying that we are opting out and why we're opting out. So basically why we would be opting out is because we already implement involuntary outpatient treatment in a different manner that we found to be successful in our counties.
Anyone have any questions for Rob?
Why did they pass this law if there was apparently no demonstrated interest in taking advantage of whatever it is? I mean, you're saying we're already providing outpatient treatment services to people in the county who need it.
Mm-hmm.
What's involved? I guess I'm a little confused on what's involved with this, the AOT that was apparently enacted. That
Like I said,
that nobody wants to participate in.
There are a number of counties that don't follow up on involuntary outpatient commitments. Our county always has. We've always had that process. So if someone's needing to be involuntarily committed to an outpatient service, we have always monitored those commitments. There's other counties that don't monitor them, and that was part of the driving force. FTAC, which I forget what it's, the technical assistant, the technical.
It was Forensic Treatment Advocacy Center.
They had spearheaded the legislation. There are a lot of family members that have been very frustrated by the Mental Health Procedures Act and the process that it takes to get someone committed. The commitment laws are based on an individual's danger to self or others or inability to care for themselves due to mental illness. And they are, what the AOT did was expand the length of time that these behaviors and these symptoms could be present, and then the person could still be committed. Within the Mental Health Procedures Act, it's a 30-day window. So the AOT expands that to 6 months or a year, and they're just.
Is it the regulations and bureaucratic requirements that go along with this?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the biggest.
It is, and then additionally, some of it is, there seems to be conflict between the Mental Health Procedures Act of 1966 and the new assisted outpatient law. The new law indicates there could be a 48-month look back, so 4 years. So if someone is involuntarily committed 4 years ago, they can actually look back that far, and that's inconsistent with the law of 1966 as well as 78 Act.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many nuances that, there's been so much conversation about this law. To answer your first question about what Robin said about FTAC, there's course, you folks are aware of the criminalization of individuals with mental illness. There's a lot of conversations in the community about individuals with mental illness being incarcerated needlessly. I think that was also part of the driving force of the legislation. The legislation actually started, I believe, in 2017 and then was passed in October of 18 with the implementation in April. And as Robin shared, we have the responsibility of doing the opt-out annually. We wanted to go to, in October, the Treatment Advocacy Center in Ohio did a training, like a 3-day training around the law. And because of just our own busyness, we weren't able to work that out. But we are, looking at the nuances of the law, but there's so many parts of the law that even philosophically are, in our opinion, questionable, like to commit someone to a peer specialist. So our peer specialist service is a person who is also in recovery, basically serving as a peer mentor kind of role, to court order, and that's what the new law says. You can court order a person to receive this mentor service. And how is that, honestly doable? If a peer specialist comes to the door and I choose not to answer the door, then I get the police involved, and it's like there's just so many parts of the law that we believe are really not doable from an operational standpoint. Anyway, those are just a couple of the caveats that we've questioned.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Robin. Next, we'll move on to agenda item 13, and I'd like to call on Jason to discuss the sheriff's office replacement of car scan. Total project cost
Sandy said, submitted a budget concept paper for capital project to replace car 10. This vehicle was on the 5-year plan to be replaced next year. However, we have just recently received an estimate to replace the engine in that vehicle at the cost of approximately $6,300 to $7,300. And just as early as we didn't go with that plan to do that, so we wanted to keep using that vehicle for shorter trips until something else happened with it, or see if we can get more mileage out of it, because the engine, there was knocking going on. Last night that vehicle was permanently placed out of service because it wouldn't go over 20 miles an hour and the check engine light was blinking, so we got it back to the roof and parked it, and so that vehicle is no longer in service.
What is the cause of the problem? What's the mechanic diagnose the problem?
The top part of the engine needs totally replaced. Other than that, I have an estimate here from LV Smith via email on what the cost would be to replace that.
It's the valves.
Valves. That vehicle the water pump was replaced, and the camshaft, other things were replaced in that, and how it was explained to us, which I think I can brought to you guys' attention. Once that kind of work is done, it leaves the engines acceptable to problems with the piston rings and O-rings and this and that. And so we kind of just crossed our fingers and said, let's keep rolling with it, see what happens. And
This is a 4-year-old vehicle.
This vehicle was a 2013.
13, okay.
This vehicle has 189,000 miles. It has 8,100 engine hours on it, which equates to 486,000 miles driven. So I think I've gone over this before with you guys. Our business has to be equated to engine hours, not miles driven, because of the amount of time our vehicles are actually on or running.
I personally think that's pretty bogus, candidly, but we don't need to go into that here. But what is when these are left running, what is the reasoning behind leaving them running, and what status are they in when they're left running?
The reason why they're left running is because our guys are out in the field, they're serving civil process.
Yeah.
You turn the engine on and off.
Is this specifically for the warrants?
No, not for warrants,
Not
for
for
civil
warrants.
process.
Okay.
with the equipment in the vehicles, with the computers and all the radio equipment, if you shut the vehicles off, turn them back on, they continue to draw power for 15-minute increments until there's a timer shut-off switch. So it's real hard on the batteries.
Isn't there a mobile power supply
Yes.
for those things?
Yes, there's kill switches to that stuff, but those vehicles, even whenever they're sitting overnight, there's still power drawn from the radio, from the Harris portable, from the radio system in there.
Right.
A little bit of power being drawn because of the memory that's in those radios. Has to be. That's why if these vehicles sit for more than 4 days at a time, we have to jump them.
All right, that's
So
that's going to drain your battery, but that's
Yes.
not going to hurt your business.
Well, the main reason why the vehicles run the whole shift is for turning on and turning off all the time, getting in and getting out of the vehicle. That's hard on the vehicles.
Yeah.
You'd have starters going bad, you'd have alternators, it was hard on the vehicles. So that's why, the biggest reason why the vehicles are on for the whole shift. And also the computers are running, that type of stuff. So it's more efficient for the vehicle to keep it running. I would like to go into the engine run hours, if I could, because
That's fine.
that is, the more research I do in my job in these vehicles and talk to dealerships and talk to other police agencies, it's really thrown at me that you need to be focused on engine hours, not miles driven in our type of work. Because most agencies now are trading their vehicle fleets, they're not letting them get over 100,000 miles because of the engine hours, because they find that they're getting into a lot of vehicle maintenance issues when they get over so many engine hours. So based on opinions out there, you know, everybody has different opinions, but in our line of work, because of the vehicles being on a lot and having to run like that, they go by engine hours and not miles driven.
Has there, as an aside, has there been any I mean, that's frankly an emissions problem too, you know, so has there been any thought to converting, when we're gonna start converting the fleet to electric or to natural gas?
No, and I don't think we've looked that route just because of the cost of those types of vehicles. Even this vehicle here that we have a quote for, I mean, the vehicle price, $34,000, that's a really good price for that vehicle. With the equipment added on, now I'm asking for a max of $54,611, that's the max. I don't plan on using that much, I plan on using $46,611.64 because I'm gonna reuse the radio, reuse the camera system. The reason why I'm asking for the max is if we start pulling this equipment out, there's something wrong with the radio, we can't reuse it, I wanna make sure that money's there just in case, but I don't plan on using the max asked for.
All right, I would just mention that if we are going to use an entirely different vehicle life standard than conventional, which makes a certain amount of sense, I think that kind of changes the whole economics behind how much should we pay for a vehicle. Is an electric vehicle too expensive?
Sure. Look into the cost, the benefits of maybe paying more in the front end to make it last longer. Yeah, I can understand that. That's something we can definitely look into. What the cost
really,
benefits are.
some of that's on our end. We probably should have facilities beginning to think about a leading edge of a fleet transition plan, because these requirements are going to be coming down the line sooner than I think a lot of people realize.
I do know that I requested to my bosses to look into all of our vehicles switching to synthetic oils instead of conventional oils. Because I feel that if our vehicles are being changed every 4,000 miles, as they are right now with conventional oil, the engine hours driven on that engine is probably 20 to 30,000 miles, and with conventional oil, it's probably breaking down more than a regular car that you just park and sit and get out. You know, your engine hours are probably almost the same as your engine miles driven. So I'm looking into synthetic oils for all of our vehicles to prolong the life of the engine, hopefully, because I know that's much better. As far as not breaking down like conventional oil does. I think that's a way to go for our vehicles.
Jason, what is car number 10?
Car number 10 is a 2013 Ford Explorer.
All right, that's what you would replace it with.
Yes, another Ford Explorer, yes. And the quote I got is from the dealership we typically deal with, which is Koch, for the 34,151. I did get a quote from New Holland Auto for the same type of vehicle, and their quote came in at $34,662, so about $500 more than Koch. because I just want to make sure that they're staying competitive with the other people that are out there supplying the same type of vehicles.
Why don't we just replace the entire motor? I know we replace certain pieces of a motor, put strain on the other, so that's not a good idea. But just to replace the motor itself, if there's nothing else wrong with that vehicle, why is that not a viable option?
Well, so if we replace the motor at $7,000.
And I would also suggest you get some other quotes other than a dealership, if we would go that route.
Do we always use L.B. Smith for any repairs that are necessary?
Typically, yes. Now, this vehicle went to our guys at the garage first and said, you have issues with this, engine issues, you gotta send this to the dealership to look at.
So we sent it down to Lemoyne.
Yeah. Yeah, because the engine needed diagnosed, and they don't have that equipment.
No, I don't expect that.
No, I think there's just maybe shops that might be closer that, you know, if you have an engine, if you have a car that's not working right, the last thing you want to do is be compelled to drive all the way to Lemoyne and drive much for traffic. So.
Well, I think we've had more success with our vehicles getting fixed with an L.B. Smith compared to Family Ford. I think we've just gone with them. We've had some issues with the local dealership fixing cars correctly, having to take them back.
There's only 2 places we can look at to get cars fixed.
Oh, we can look. Do you have a suggestion for other Ford dealerships in the area?
I'm just not sure that in terms of repairs that you have to go to a dealership.
No.
It's by far the most expensive and very much narrows your options.
So your suggestion would be like a Jerry's engine shop down the street?
That's presenting a false choice. I mean, there are various levels of service available, and we should scout around and see what those options are.
Okay.
You know, there are levels between Waste Management and Sanford and Son. So we should be fully aware of what those levels are.
Well, when you're dealing with Sanford and Son, you're going to get a Sanford and Son truck driving down the road.
That's precisely my point, is we are not, the choice you're presenting is a false one. We have chosen between Waste Management and Sanford and Son.
Well, I think it's just always been, you know, we've taken our vehicles to the guys at the garage, and where do they take the vehicles to after that? It's a dealership, because the small mom and pop garages that are around and or the mid-level ones aren't putting in full new, brand new engines in these type of vehicles anymore.
They are not. That's why you would not go there, but that's not your only choice. That's my point.
So you're suggesting another dealership then? Well, I'm losing. I'm getting lost here.
And Jason, there are companies, mechanics that do this. This is their main line of work, replacing engines, building engines.
Okay.
I think what Gary and I am saying, it would be worth talking to these folks are experts. This is all they do.
Okay.
And I think their price would be a little bit less than this, just as an option.
Okay.
And
If I could jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Years ago, I don't know if you were here, Gary, or not, but years ago, we had tried one of these vehicles that were refurbished, new engine put in them, and they went over the vehicle, brakes and all that stuff. Turned out though, the vehicle was still a vehicle with almost 200,000 miles on it, and it nickel dimed us, and we said we're not going to again because, you know, you put a new engine in it, but you still got a car that has almost 200,000 miles on it, so the interior of it is deteriorating. Other things on the vehicle is deteriorating.
Well, those things are going to deteriorate at a different rate. I mean, the drivetrain is the thing that makes the vehicle workable or unworkable. And that's the key. And there are lots of cars out on the road, more than ever, frankly, that have been refurbed and put back into service.
I agree with that.
You know, official and unofficial.
But it seems like these vehicles aren't being built the way they were built in the past. We're seeing, I mean, the seats are coming apart, the interiors are coming apart. The quality's not there that was there in vehicles that we used to get. And I never thought we would ever deal with an issue that we had blown an engine. quality's not there in these vehicles, and we're not getting the lifespan out of what we thought we could get out of them.
I have to dispute that frankly. In terms of the drivetrain, cars are lasting longer than ever.
I agree that, but not with the use that we're using them for, daily use we're using for. I mean, you and I, my personal vehicle, yeah, I can get a lot more miles out of my personal vehicle. But these cars that get started up with first thing in the morning and they're running all day long, and sometimes they're running at night, all day long and night, they're not your typical cars that we're driving every day.
No, but they still accrue certain benefits of the improvements that have been made to drivetrain technologies. That's my only.
I would love to invite you down to the garage to show you these vehicles, the interiors, the shape of them, the frames underneath, after they have 190,000 miles on them, to show you. I mean, our guys have equipment on, okay, so they're rubbing on seats, they're rubbing against
Not
doors.
disputing there's going to be wear and tear.
No, I agree.
I just don't buy into the idea. We have to have the best of the best because everything else is crap.
No, it's not the best of the best, but I think when you're talking 200,000 miles on a vehicle, a stop and go driving, and like, and you got to talk about frame of the vehicle underneath. You got to make sure the brake lines after 200,000 miles. We had an expedition that we just put out of service because the brake lines were rusted. And our deputy put the foot to the floor and almost ran into a car in front of him because the brake lines were rusted out. And that car only had 130,000 miles
That's
on
not
it.
being caught on inspection because virtually every car has brake lines. By around 200,000 every car has brake
Well,
lines.
I can't comment to that because I'm not the inspectors at the garage, but I just know that when you get vehicles that are so many years old, you're going to deal with a lot of issues. And we're in the emergency vehicle field, and you're transporting prisoners, it's a liability, and it's an issue that I don't know that we want to deal with when we're dealing with rusted vehicles and safety. If
Well,
we're gonna
here's
put
the
dimensions-
thing. If our schedule is built around vehicles lasting a certain lifetime, and they're not lasting that certain lifetime, then we've got a systemic problem, not a single vehicle problem. So we need to completely rework our replacement schedule then. And then maybe it's time to start talking about different options. Are we gonna be back here next year again with another vehicle that didn't quite make it as long as we estimated it would make it?
Well, I came up with a 5-year vehicle plan with a replacement plan, and that plan was not followed through with by, if I requested 2 vehicles and I was given 1 for certain vehicles on and conditions of them. And so we went off of that plan, and every year I rework it, and this vehicle would have been replaced last year. So, I mean, I've come up with a plan, I've implemented it, and I'm trying to do what I can do from the information that I have and the research I do with other agencies and how police vehicles are being used out there and how long they're being used.
Well, my point is that maybe we need to go back and relook at the assumptions underlying our planning process. But in the interim, we have 1 vehicle that we need to address here. So the question before the board now is, do we go off plan and buy a whole new vehicle, or do we have a drivetrain replacement?
Amy, you have a question?
Well, so their 5-year plan, I wanted to talk about it a little bit because I was the one that asked them to update their 5-year plan because over the past couple of years, some of their vehicles that were on their plan weren't approved. And so their plan became outdated because they had a normal replacement cycle. So the one that just broke was actually on the original 5-year plan for last year. And so on their updated plan, it's for replacement for 2020, but it was actually on for, I think, 2018. And I believe there was another one that was the year before that's in that mix. So I was the one that asked them to readjust their 5-year plan to be with what their actual vehicles currently are.
So is the plan of record, the plan that is in place now, is it a viable plan, or are we discovering it's a not viable plan?
It is an adjusted plan from the original. So this vehicle was slated to be out in 2018.
Right.
So it was adjusted, and some of the vehicles are older than the sheriff had preferred.
Right.
Does that make sense? But
It does. The missing component is we don't know if the original plan was perfect or not either. This plan is different from the original plan, is what you're saying. So
with older vehicles, yes.
Right.
And the older the vehicles get, the higher the risk of break.
was the original plan changed for what, budget reasons, or Or what?
They requested the vehicle and it was denied.
Okay, I don't remember the instance because we have so many things come before us. All right. It would be helpful to know if we have a one-off here or if we have a planned problem.
I don't believe it's a plan problem because we always recommended everybody adjust their plans because you can end up putting more or less miles on a vehicle. The sheriff actually, when people need help in developing their 5-year plan, I normally send them to the sheriff because they're good at evaluating what's happening with their cars on a daily basis and adjusting and moving cars around based on what's going on with those vehicles. So we kind of put the sheriff out as the ones to go to for help because they're in their vehicles all the time. And they do adjust their plan.
Even though their vehicles are used by this completely different scale than what real average everyday vehicles are.
Most of the fleets that we have though are police type, so you'll have the juvenile probation, adult probation. Now they're not putting the same type of miles on.
Well, I hope they're not letting their cars run all day with
They're
AC
not.
on and tons of
It's-
equipment and dogs inside and whatever else the justification is.
It's not the same, but how you evaluate your vehicles and whether you would need to adjust how you're using them. I mean, they do a lot of long-term and local travel and they adjust their usage of their vehicles based on the wear and tear that's happening. And that's kind of what we recommend other departments to talk to them about how to extend the lives of their vehicles.
Okay, I'm still at a loss. So we have, what's before us is, well, we're different than everybody else. And then what you're saying is, well, we send everybody to them as the benchmark on how to do it. So,
She's saying about a 5-year plan.
right.
Because every time they ask us for an updated 5-year plan, we submit it. We spend a lot of time on it, and so they send those agencies to us for examples on how to do that and follow that, not necessarily that they have the same type of vehicles.
Okay, so it's the general practice.
Yes.
Right, I think it's basically looking at what we address when we're looking at that 5-year plan. Are we looking at the mileage, are we looking at the year of the vehicle, or are we looking at repair costs as far as what has that vehicle cost us so far to get repaired?
Jason, this vehicle in question, my original thought was the only issue with it is the motor. Are you telling me there's other issues with it? Such as the interior, the frame under.
Well, we put 2 seat covers on it because the seat was totally ripped apart. The floorboard, it is underneath the carriage is very rusty. And we consistently are putting brake pads and rotors on it because of the age of it.
Well, that, to me, that's normal wear and tear. What concerns me is if the frame is rusty, there's not much you can do about it.
Right, but what I mean by that is, the stop and go driving our guys do, we're rough on vehicles, we are. I'll be the first to admit that, because of the type of work that we
I've
do.
seen some of them.
The stop and go driving, we're rough, it's not a normal, they're not driven like a normal person would drive them. So we go through, the maintenance of them a lot.
And we looked at a plan, we thought about trying to assign certain people to certain vehicles. That's one of the big problems is you got so many different people driving this one vehicle that everybody has different driving habits.
Well, we did that at the borough level. We assigned people specific vehicles, so they took better care of them, quite frankly.
Right,
Anyway, so-
and we
so-
tried to do that, but we don't have enough vehicles. that we
So my
can-
question is, given the prime responsibilities of your office, I understand we started this conversation saying that these cars are worn out faster because they're left to idle. They have to be left to idle. Now I'm hearing that they're driven hard, and I'm wondering what circumstances under which are we having to drive our vehicles hard?
Well, the hard driving is just from the different people driving. Everybody has a different way to drive a vehicle. I mean, some people are.
I guess that's what I'm getting at, is
Some people just drive.
Well, I think when I'm talking hard driving, I'm talking stop and go. You're pulling in the driveway, you're putting in the park, you're getting out, you're coming back in, you're putting it back, you stop and go a lot. You're getting in and out of the vehicle a lot. That's what I mean by hard driving. I don't mean by we're out there driving like NASCAR drivers. I mean, I think it's abnormal driving abnormal conditions, driving up in North and South Mountain, up dirt lanes in the middle of nowhere on not paved roads, potholes. So, you know, I mean, it's not normal driving conditions.
It's not highway driving.
Yeah, it's not, yeah.
Jason, the replacement of this vehicle, where will that put you in the 5-year plan?
This vehicle was to be on next year's 5-year plan.
Yeah, but I know that the plan apparently was adjusted in 2018.
Yes. So
if this vehicle is replaced, what are we looking at, say, for next year for replacement or 2021? We probably have that documented somewhere.
Yes.
I don't recall.
Yes, I do. And next year, the plan was to replace 3 vehicles. This was one of them. The other 2 are 2010 Ford Explorers with similar mileage.
Okay.
And they're much older.
So we're looking at potentially this one and 2 more.
Yes.
2020. Are they budgeted?
They're in our capital contingency. They were requested during the
Now,
year.
is the Ford Explorer a problem? Are there other options? Have you looked at other vehicles? Is this like the best for what you guys need?
I think
That's for the cost.
For the cost.
I mean, we're looking, like he mentioned, we have a lot of rural driving where we're driving back lanes and not off-road driving, but similar to kind of off-road driving. So we look at SUVs with ground clearance and also for weather that they're all-wheel drive. So the only other option, you have the Ford Explorer, and then you look at the Chevrolet Tahoe and the prices, a dramatic difference.
And we looked at the Durangos too, and there's a big price difference, just in the base model.
So, and that's why I think you see a lot of law enforcement agencies going with the Ford Explorer.
Yeah, it seems to be
the cost.
the default vehicle that I see on the road for.
I mean, the richer departments are getting the Tahoes, but you're spending a lot more money on the Tahoe. And the other problem, I mean, everything's progressed over the years. There's so much equipment in these vehicles anymore. I mean, there's not just a radio and siren and some lights on them anymore. Now there's computers in them and everything else. So, I mean, those costs have really driven up the total cost of the vehicle, which is pretty much out of our control. What Ford did, I was hoping that 10 we could take most of the equipment out and just transfer it over into the new one and save this equipment cost. Ford's better idea was to change interior design of the Fords for 2020, so nothing fits.
And every 4 years, they typically do that. And this 2020 is the 5th year. So 2019 was the last year of this body style. So 2020 it changes. So we can't reuse the cage.
The console.
The console. But in this
So
price,
what are we looking at getting in 2020 or 2019?
2020, you can no longer get 2019s. Looked into that. They're long gone.
And that's the other thing that we're dealing with now too. I used to know some of these companies that would buy vehicles in stock, and they're not doing it. They're ordering everything. So this vehicle we came across is probably one that was ordered for another agency, and they didn't buy it. They backed out of it, and now they're stuck with it sitting there. So now they want to sell it.
What happens to all that other emergency equipment that we have to put on the vehicles from the old vehicle? What happens, just gets thrown out, or what do you do?
We try to resurface it. I mean, at one point, there was a lot of vehicle partitions and stuff was sold. We sold at the county at the sealed bid sale, and the constables bought a lot of that to put in their cars, so they had, prisoner protection in their vehicles.
We will, in this instance, we will reuse as much as we can. We're afraid that with being the 2020 with a different interior, that we're not going to be able to use most of the lights. We're going to try and use some of it, but we're afraid we're not going to be able to use most. Now, like, we can reuse the radio, the video camera system. We don't have to worry about a laptop or anything, so we're going to reuse all that stuff. But as far as the prisoner partition and the interior lights and everything, that's, we're afraid that's not gonna.
The provisioning car camera,
Correct.
you're gonna be able to reuse that?
Yes.
Okay, it says here possible reuse.
Yeah, and that's in the maximum amount I asked, and like I said, we're most likely gonna fall in the $46,000 range because I was told to add that on just in case when they pull the provision camera system out, something would happen to it, something, it's not reusable for one reason or another, in the new vehicle, just as a backdrop, just in case when we pull this stuff out and we can't reuse it in the new vehicle. But that's, there's no intentions of not using that.
The only thing you might have to do is just replace some of the cabling, because cable needs to run, and it could be worn or whatever, but that, you wouldn't have to replace the cameras and the recording device.
So essentially, the emergency lights and all that, you're definitely gonna probably have to replace that, right? You can't use the equipment.
Some you can, some you might be able to, other ones you might not.
Well, for instance, these vehicles, we typically do the interior, we don't have the outside light bars anymore, everything's inside. So the main one is mounted on the inside top windshield, and if that doesn't fit in the 2020, which I'm suspecting it probably won't, we can't use it. If we can, we would definitely will, because we don't want that stuff sitting around. I mean, it doesn't do us any good.
Yeah, well, okay.
Have we ever done block buys with other law enforcement agencies, especially now we have a schedule? So should we pick up a
Some are, a lot are doing enterprise route.
I mean,
they're leasing the vehicles. And I am not, there's just something about that I'm not comfortable about the lease, because a lot of them, I'm waiting for some of them that they haven't got to that point where they've done the swap out yet, to see how smooth that goes.
that doesn't seem to be problematic given everything.
Yeah, it seems like that's the problem in the lease where the issue comes up and it's not cost effective for the agency that's leasing them, is when they do the swap out. And I'm just hoping to get some feedback on how that works, because a lot of the people I'm talking to, they haven't got to that point yet where they're going, it's time to replace the vehicle, the lease is up, let's swap it out. I don't know how that works.
It's
We
cost
did
a
a
lot of
study of
money.
that in 2016, and I recall seeing some numbers, and we all said no.
It would cost us substantially more to do that. And then we are also kind of giving the leasing company the ability to call the vehicles back whenever they want to. So then you have a transition time where you have a vehicle out of commission, and we have to pay for every time all of the equipment is transferred from one vehicle to another.
Right.
So they're telling you when you have to do it, and it's at our expense.
And in some of that research, they have the ability to give us specific vehicles without us saying, whether they can give us a car compared to an SUV.
Yes.
And we have no control over that. And so I know that's an issue.
Because
It's
they're
like
making.
anybody, there's any energy behind making a conversion to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's more, we would spend substantially more than we currently do in the model that we're using.
So the answer to my question regarding block buy is no.
Because we're buying vehicles under co-stars now.
Yeah, not always the cheapest.
No, state contracts sometimes is actually cheaper.
The other questions, guys,
So we're gonna see some information regarding future maintenance options, the range of maintenance options, so we're not wholly dependent on LB.
Sometimes there's insurance issues because we have minimum requirements for a liability standpoint, and a lot of the smaller organizations don't meet the insurance requirements.
That is an issue. I forgot to mention that. We've gone to do some stuff with some local vendors on electrical camera installations, and we weren't able to use them. For instance, some innovations on one of them to do our camera installs, they didn't have the minimum amount of liability insurance, and so
So you go to somebody else who does have it.
Yes.
yeah. And
But point is to have a range of options. There's nothing wrong with saying, well, we got a transmission guy down here, we got a.
We used to go to Family Ford, and Family Ford started requiring us to pay on the spot when we went to pick the vehicle up after repair, so.
We had some discussion too about non-dealership options too, which these days are, certainly should be viable.
Right, but then the insurance issues where that would pop up, probably some of it as well.
And when there's another option, John Locke's crew determines what they feel is a good viable option for the repairs. And then we work on the liability issues, and HR, the solicitor, and finance are all involved in determining whether or not we can accept lower liability levels.
If there's no issues, if anyone has any suggestions of potential repair places, I think we should at least check them out to see if they're viable. Because I can tell you there are a few around here that I think would be. I think we should at least check into it.
I agree. We should start probably with John because he has some familiarity with it, and then there's, he can take responsibility for it. We can put up even if anybody else has suggestions on places, they can certainly throw those in the mix. But I would like to see us move forward with some consideration on that, how to be, achieve some cost efficiency, shall we say, with the maintenance function.
And we defer that 100% to John because they have that expertise, and finance does not. My dad kept me away from vehicles on purpose.
Well, if you're gonna be looking to replace two more vehicles next year, right, in 2020, how much, do you have any idea? I know that, this is not doing that here, but if we replace the motor, like Vince was talking about in this car, how long do you think that, what would we get out of the car? Or you're saying the rest of it's ready to fall apart too? I mean, one of the things with these purchases is all these add-ons that you have to have. And it just seems to me if we can fix it and get a few more years out of it, that might be the route to go.
I mean, you put a new engine in it now, and 2 months down the road, the transmission goes out. And that costs almost as much as the engine.
I address that too. So a lot of times John Locke evaluates the vehicles that we're taking out of commission, and if he believes that they have additional use for local travel in non-emergency type situations, we are fixing and then using those vehicles in those areas.
Well, I would get the estimate, including the entire drivetrain, the engine, and the transmission. So at least you have something comparable, something to compare to.
So if you would approve moving forward with this vehicle, John will evaluate the vehicle and determine whether it's feasible to fix it and use it in the pool. And if not, they'll sell it in the auction.
Well, it's not running now.
Well,
That's what people buy.
You'd be surprised.
There's a couple cars up for sale right now, and it doesn't run.
I don't have any other questions.
I don't want to make anyways a pound foolish either.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys.
And moving on to agenda item 14, I'll call on Jack Carroll to discuss the reappointment recommendation to the Drug and Alcohol Community Advisory Board. Jack?
Commissioners, one of our board members, Jennifer Zamponia from Camp Hill, is coming to the end of her first 3-year term on our Community Advisory Board at the end of this month. Our bylaws and state guidelines allow board members to serve 2 consecutive 3-year terms, and she's interested in doing so. She currently is employed as the Director of Operations for Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers in Pennsylvania. It's a statewide program designed to provide intervention and treatment services for lawyers who are impaired because of substance abuse or mental health issues. She is a very reliable member of the board and adds a lot to our discussions. So my recommendation is that you do reappoint her for a second 3-year term.
Any questions for Jack? Thank you,
Sounds good.
Jack.
Thanks, Jay.
Let's move on to agenda item 15, and I'll call on Commissioner Hertzler to discuss the reappointment recommendations to the Agricultural Land Preservation Board.
Okay, thanks. Sandy, well, these folks are, well-known and have been active participants on the Agricultural Land Preservation Board, and I would certainly recommend their reappointment, since they're both interested in continuing on.
Thank you, Commissioner Hertzler. We'll make sure they're on the agenda for Monday. Next, we move on to the Commissioner Liaison Reports, and we'll be on Commissioner DeFilippo.
Thanks, Sandy. I have one report, and that's for the Western Council of Governments, which met this past Monday. Some highlights, Dickinson Township has had public hearings on revision of their zoning map and subdivision and development ordinance. It is almost, I will be voting on it this month for passage. Some additional items. Mike Fry, who's currently on the Western Council of Governments, is going to be resigning at the end of the year. He was recognized. Mike is from the borough of Newville. Shippensburg Borough has enforced a $75 per quarter stormwater fee. Newville Borough's Christmas parade is tomorrow night. Many of the townships have announced that their budgets have been passed with no tax increase. One other item here, Shippensburg Township has some new businesses that are opening or in the process of opening, which is a Hampton Inn, Starbucks, and a Dunkin' Donuts is on its way. Steve Alt gave an update on the casino situation. Apparently a number of traffic studies were done and were okay, but the Gaming Commission requires its own traffic study, which was conducted by PennDOT. And PennDOT requested that the Parks Casino improve the access in and off of 81 at a cost of $30 million. The casino refused to do so. There are $30 million in improvements. So the casino said no. However, the casino folks are looking at other spots within and outside of Shippensburg Township. And that's all I have, Steve.
Thank you, Commissioner DeFilippo. Commissioner Hertzler.
That must have been some entrance project. That's for 30 million. I don't know. I know these projects are expensive though. So, well, anyway, thank you, Sandy. I attended my last official meeting of the state's 911 advisory board last Thursday, and I, along with Commissioner Mark McCracken of Fairfield County, were recognized for our service on the 911 advisory board since its inception in 2015, following the passage of Act 12 of 2015. I'm not sure who will be replacing me in representing the state's third and fourth class counties on this important advisory board, but I did want to mention if any of my colleagues are interested, I would recommend that you contact Lisa Schaefer at CCAP and express your interest. I think that there's several third class counties here, and what's nice about having someone from the region is it's easy for the person to attend the meetings, which are always held at PEMA headquarters across the river. There's going to be some changes ahead as we move toward next gen 911 and a whole new state network tying all of the counties together and more readily using GIS technology for emergency calls. Regarding the distribution of the $1.65 per communication device fee that was enacted and instituted 4 years ago and continues for the next several years until it's revisited by the General Assembly. The formula for distribution is likely to change, and as factors such as population, county's population will be taken into consideration, and possibly also call volume, if there can be a way to provide for equity and fairness among the counties with respect to call volume. Those other measures could be factored into the formula, and to date, while Cumberland County has fared extremely well in the distribution, I will say that could change. What's important here is that all the counties statewide are treated with the same degree of fairness. I just want to say that one of the things that I've enjoyed in serving on the state's 911 advisory board is the fact that there has been a high degree of congeniality among all the different regions, regardless of the size of the county or whether it's large or small. And we have worked together to not allow geography or political boundaries to get in the way of working through issues, and just trying to make sure that the funds that are made available by consumers with a $1.65 fee, are expended in a cost-efficient and cost-effective manner. So I hope that kind of collaborative cooperation is going to continue on this advisory board moving forward. And I did want to just spread on the record here, I can't say enough about the professionalism and expertise of the folks at the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, especially Deputy Director Jeff Boyle, and also our folks here at Cumberland County Public Safety, who have been a tremendous assist to me in helping me understand some of the complexities with respect to this whole issue. Harrisburg Area Transportation Study Coordinating Committee met Friday, December the 6th. And as for projects in the county, if you haven't seen it yet, the signalization and interchange improvement project at Creekside Road and I-581 is pretty much wrapped up, and I think it's already gone a long way in improving safety at that very busy interchange off of 581, getting on Creekside there, going to Wegmans and all around there. Also, the $8 million Erford Road Bridge Replacement Project is now complete as well. There was discussion on the I-81 improvement strategy that's underway, which I talked about, I think, our last liaison report. There's word that the plan, the next step is to have a meeting in next month with all of our state and federal legislators to hopefully get them on board so that they understand what we're doing, focusing in on the areas that need improvement, so that the resources are there when we identify these focus areas for improvement, understanding that what I-81 needs is not going to happen overnight, even if we had the money. So it's important that we start the process, though, and move toward capacity expansion. Also at the HATS meeting, Commuter Services of Pennsylvania detailed a successful carpooling initiative with the DB Schenker Logistics and Warehouse operation that now employs over 600 people here at the Allen Road exit of I-81. And in any event, in just the past 2 years, the company's preferred parking program that Commuter Services have helped the company implement, where employees with 3 or more riders in one vehicle get parking spaces in close proximity to the warehouse. They've grown from 283 carpoolers out of that 600 employee complement, which I think is pretty good. At the same time, they're also providing for shuttle service for employees from off-site parking, with over 180 employees riding the shuttles daily. So to date, according to the company, they've grown their carpooling commuter parking from 9% of their parking lot to nearly 25%. So, I think there's a success story there. According to the company, their commuter parking program, in addition to helping reduce traffic congestion, has eliminated some 1.2 million kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions monthly. So, it's also helping to protect and benefit our environment and reduce our footprint, if you will, here.
Hopefully it offsets the sheriff's vehicles.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Good point there. The idling of our sheriff's vehicles. And I know we discussed it before, but I do think that, this is something we might want to take another look at. I think we had talked about the idea of some preferred parking spots for county employees. And maybe this is another way that we could take a look at that to see whether we can encourage carpooling among the county's employees. So I think it's, this is one way, we got to build the capacity, no question about it. At the same time, we can reduce the number of people driving back and forth. I think that helps in terms of the congestion. The county's Conservation District Board met Tuesday morning, was my last meeting there as well, and I was humbled to be recognized for my service the past 4 years as the Commissioner of Conservation District Board member and director. The good news from a local perspective is that it's anticipated that the Conservation District fee revenue, and Dana left, will reduce the county subsidy to less than what's been budgeted for 2020. So that's a positive from a fiscal perspective. A kickoff meeting for the county's so-called action plan, we heard a little bit about today, Pennsylvania's Phase 3 watershed implementation plan, is scheduled for January 29th from 1 to 3 p.m. At our Allen Road campus. And as you heard, both the Planning Department and Conservation District are working on that and are looking for stakeholders to attend a meeting from our various municipalities. Conservation District is going after a couple of grants, one for $255,980 from the state's Growing Greener Plus program to provide for Yellow Breeches trout habitat and stream bank restoration project at Allenbury. The owner of Allenbury, Mike Kennedy, apparently, as I understand, is planning to provide a $50,000 in-kind contribution as a match to draw down the state grant. The other grant request is for $3,000, and it's being sought in cooperation with our agricultural extension for kits to teach our county's high school students about stormwater best management practices. The district is also, as we heard today, looking to get a $1,500 grant for the update of its strategic plan, which is, I guess the last time that was done was 10 years ago. And then there was a discussion about the county possibly participating along with Adams, Chester, and Lancaster counties in a pilot program with the State Department of Environmental Protection for the further development of ag inspections in Chesapeake Bay best management practices. I don't think this is one and the same with what we were talking about. This is something different. There's some caution, however, on the part of the our conservation district and the others about whether DEP is looking to offload its enforcement responsibility to the conservation districts. Understand there needs to be some further discussion on that particular point. And I would expect that we're going to have continued discussions with the State Department of Environmental Protection. The district has sent a letter of support of a Lower Allen Township Growing Greener Plus grant request for a watershed restoration project in the Beacon Hill community that involves a retrofit of a stormwater dry detention basin in the Yellow Breeches watershed. And finally, there was discussion about the spreading of food processing residuals, FPRs, as we're now, aware of, on area farms, and the issues and concerns that, that has created among our constituents. And we talked about, injection as perhaps being a way, but then when we're trying to, do the no-till on that, there's issues that arise. And then there's also discussion, could it be treated somehow to remove this smell and stench? And then we also talked a little bit about the fact that, a lot of these RFPs are coming from out of state. It's coming from out of state, it's coming from Virginia and I think Maryland, if I'm not mistaken. And it's been spread here in Pennsylvania. And is the reason for that because our state's regulations haven't been updated in a long, long time. So, I know that Representative Glime's been interested in this, and Vince has been in touch with Representative Glime's office. So, maybe there'll be another look at the rigs involving that. But, and that's it, I think. My last liaison report. It's been my privilege to represent the board on as the liaison of the Conservation District, the State 911 Advisory Board, the Agricultural Land Preservation Board, the Harrisburg Area Transportation Authority Coordinating Committee, the Aging Advisory Board, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board. I think that pretty much covers it. I don't know. But in any event, I don't know who's going to be taking over for that, but I just wanted to offer to my colleagues that, I'm retiring, but doesn't mean I'm moving away. I'm still only a phone call away. So if there's any information, background, I may be able to provide in the future, please don't hesitate to.
Your phone will be ringing.
I told you we're getting you one of those 800 megahertz handsets. Instant urgent dispatch.
Jim, question on Ag Board.
Sure.
Maybe you reported it and I wasn't listening, but I know Stephanie held a meeting in early November to go over the program, particularly for new people.
Yes.
Did we get any new applicants out of that?
I don't know whether we got new applicants. I think that we had a couple dozen folks that showed up.
10.
So I don't know. I haven't heard since then.
That's okay.
Wednesday's Ag Board meeting was canceled. There wasn't any business to attend to, apparently. So I haven't heard. So I can check that out.
Sorry, the deadline's the end of the year. Okay.
I'm sure we probably have. It's just-
Yeah. Sure. I can just call Stephanie tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner President. Commissioner
I do want a follow-up question, Jim. In
Yeah.
terms of the situation on Dickinson with the,
Yeah.
fertilizer issue, quote unquote, are there any safeguards being discussed to prevent every other farm from deciding they're going to use this
No,
practice?
apparently not. I mean, it's apparently permissible. They have, certain guidelines they need to follow, but I think there's questions being asked, and I don't know that all the questions have been answered. So.
There's nothing we can do to prevent the next farm over from.
No, as far as I know.
As far
I
as-
mean, the one thing about it is apparently it does serve a purpose in terms of providing for a nutrient, for our fields. And, but I don't know in terms of how the arrangements are made. I think there's one hauler that's been doing this. So, in any event, but it's going to need to be, there were no, what should I say, I think there was a recognition of the problem at the Conservation District, but no real solutions were discussed. We talked about some of the possibilities, but I do think that one of the...
Is that what's being communicated to the constituents out there who contacted us and others on this?
Well, they shared our letter, the letter that Carl and
So
Kurt put together.
They know what the counties played.
Yeah, well, we shared that with the conservation district members, so at least they're aware of that, but, yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I think that, I would hate to, if we're being a dumping ground, and I don't want to say that lightly, I don't know if that's the case, but if we have other states around us that have stricter regulations, what I heard, I think, was that the other states don't permit the application during certain times of the year, like now. And maybe that's because it doesn't necessarily, I guess, dissipate into the soil.
So in other words, don't worry, our legislators are on it.
Well, I don't know about that. I do think that, it's something that this board should continue to, because our constituents are concerned about it. I mean, and
But the power that made him to make any change apparently rests with the Commonwealth, not us.
Yeah, Monroe Township, I know, had, this was a topic of discussion in their last supervisor meeting, and I know we had some conservation district staff there. And from what I understand, none of the farmers that are applying this to their fields are doing anything illegal. It's the law that needs to be changed.
let me add one thing I forgot to mention is the injection wells at the Penn Commerce Center at Penn Township were being drilled. And I think they've done 10 to 15 of those so far. Now, this is not all that widespread of a way to get rid of stormwater, but we'll see how this all works out. I think we're still a little concerned about it. However, I think it is important to underscore that the water that's being injected is going to be treated and, filtered, I guess is the best, better way to put it, so that, when this mixes with the aquifer, hopefully there won't be any problem with the quality of the water.
And how much are they putting down into these injections?
I don't know what the number is.
I'm sure the limestone underneath will be glad that the water's filtered.
Not all of the acreage is going to be, the stormwater runoff is going to come, or be injected. So they do have some, I think, a drainage basin in that kind of thing, so you have the natural.
Was there ever any resolution to the question regarding the potential for increasing sinkhole activity?
That was a discussion, and there's no real resolution on that. And the other thing that apparently the developer has agreed to do well testing, around the perimeter of where the warehouse is going to be, or is going in there. But one of the things that I learned a long time ago, because I have a well, I just have a well on my property. You don't know where those aquifers go, how they go
or come from.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So, in any event, but our folks seem to think that it's all being handled well apparently, and so we'll see. But you're right about the sinkholes and the caverns. They've gone to. They said
the water quality issue is always manageable, but the water volume issue is going to have considerably greater impact.
Well, apparently when they were drilling one of the wells, the bit broke off. They couldn't retrieve it, so they ended up with a huge expense on that. And then as far as how deep, about 120 feet. That's how far down they go. So
that's deep.
And they're running into caverns and everything else underneath there. So will you have potential sinkholes? I don't know. I'm not an expert. I have no idea. Far from being an expert.
I'm not an expert either, but I can tell you, fishing a bit out of a broken bit out of a is a nightmare.
Well, yeah, I guess they've had trouble with drilling too, because what happens is, they get down so far, and then they hit like an open area, and then the hole fills up, and they got to go back down again. So But,
Okay.
but that project, I guess, is moving forward, and,
I think we'll probably be hearing about it again someday. So. Before I issue I just want to be clear. Did we reach a conclusion in regards to the sheriff's vehicles? Because we're going to vote on this Monday. We asked for some, information on maintenance things. We asked a possibility of overhauling the drivetrain or replacing the drivetrain. But I never heard a conclusion. So it sounds to me like after all of that, we're just giving them what they want.
Well, no, we can talk about it now if you want. I thought a motor replacement would be the best way to go, but it sounds like this vehicle has other things going with it as well. It has 189,000 miles on it. If it had maybe 89,000, I think maybe a motor replacement would be the way to go. But I will say I'm leaning towards letting it go this time and approving it. But we need to get a plan, like you said, Gary, for these repairs, not to be automatically sent to the dealership. That's insane.
There's a number of issues. Can we put on the project lists and make sure that we get John Lopp engaged in that? And he probably should meet with us, in my opinion, because we raised a lot of issues that I'm afraid are just going to fall by the wayside. If John does it independently, we can put some things on the table that may be relevant, and maybe he can tell us if they're not relevant, but I'd like to see us take a organized approach toward that. And I personally, I tend to agree if it was anything less than 189,000, but I'm still not buying in totality what's being fed to us on these vehicles. I think we maybe need to step back and discuss fleet management once again in general, and replacement cycles and things of that nature. And perhaps maybe even look into the idea that portions of the fleet, maybe not the sheriff's office, but others, we may want to determine if there's grant monies available for electric vehicles. I know they're trying to form, the feds are trying to form a critical mass in certain geographies where there's population to make it justifiable to put in charging stations and all of that, because there's underlying infrastructure that comes with electric fleet, same with natural gas and other options. These things may be a few years down the line, but they're not too many years down the line. And lead times in terms of capital projects like fleet maintenance, we need to start talking about it now. So
would you like that meeting scheduled after you come back?
yeah, I think the beginning of the year, once we've had a chance to take care of the business and digest some of what's going on here. But I would like to see us actively discuss the maintenance options as well. I don't think going to the dealer for everything makes the sense that we're being told.
And I do know that they do take cars regularly to John, and John can't fix it. I think in that email that you sent, I think he tells them to go to the dealer.
Yeah, we should revisit that for at least some discussion. Do we have a flatbed that we can take vehicles that are non-operable, or do we have to pay for them to come and get them? Or there's a whole range of issues. Vehicle fleet maintenance is expensive, and it's obviously an area that we should be keeping an eye on. So I just raised the point that I think the sheriff's office needs to know too. We didn't just put them to the meat grinder for nothing, and they're going to get everything that they want. There is an ask on the table here from them, and an expectation that we're going to be scrutinizing this going forward. I personally have seen some of those vehicles used in manual. I think it's harder than it's justifiable. So, and I don't necessarily accept the logic behind everything that's fed us today. I'd say that with those guys over here. I think they got the gist of it as it is. But anyhow, okay. At this point, let me move on to a quick run through.
Jim, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't belabor it. I think there were a lot of good points were made during the discussion today. I think that, I mean, we could replace the engine, save us the full cost of the vehicle and the equipment placement, and see how long that lasts. But then again, we might be right back where we are. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we don't want to be penny-wise and pound foolish. And I do think, and of course, this happened. I've seen this we don't, it appears like in our society today, we don't fix anything anymore. We don't, it just gets replaced, and it's kind of like with computers and some of these other things. But I think the idea of looking into whether or not we need to go to a dealership for maintenance, or whether we can go to a qualified mechanic somewhere else, I think it's something we should look into. If we can save a few dollars there, and then the vehicles themselves. I mean, if maybe we should look at a different model if we're not getting what we thought, or not getting what we paid for. So anyway, those are just. Well, I thought Gary made a good point too, in terms of is there some kind of a joint effort that we could make with our municipalities that are always buying police cars too, and not always trusting co-stars to be the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, paraphrase a line from famous American play. I wonder what the poor counties are doing. If it's this expensive for us, how is everybody else absorbing this, and what are their practices? But, okay. In the interest of time. All right, planning, let's see, some of this Kurt, I think, has told us already. Wolf Bridge bids are due December 12th. The transit mixer, I think we're all signed up for in January at the Carlisle Masonic Temple. That's in regards to input into the proposed CAT bus routes, network redesign, as they refer to it. So, we're all signed up for that, I believe. And also, after next week's Planning Commission meeting, which I will be unable to attend, and they don't really take call-ins, so I'm going to be out of town. If anybody would like to go to that Thursday, 7:30, feel free. They're going to be also taking action on recommendations to send us for the 2 vacancies on the Planning Commission. Kirk's very pleased with the candidate pool they had, and he thinks they probably narrowed it down to the 2 they're going to recommend, but they got to go through their process. Of course, he's very pleased with what our potential additions are on board there. So like, keep the winning streak going. And
Gary, they still start at
7:30 a.m. And let's see, that is, so they'll have those meetings for us probably right after that. Let's see here. In terms of CADIC, they're the Envisioned Futures program, which is our strategic planning / visioning / board development initiative, which is well underway. I just lost my summary here. It is well underway. 30+ phone interviews, board and staff, 3 focus group sessions are complete. I think they're doing a series of focus groups today in the various industry groups. The Policy and Planning Commission committee has been reconstituted. We had our first meeting, brought some new folks in that Mr. Keener vetted for the strategic role that we have for that committee. I think we've got a really excellent committee, probably the best we've ever had, and they will be taking the overall responsibility for the planning initiative going forward, and then maintaining our adherence to it after that planning phase is done, making sure we stay on task. Holiday event was yesterday. 200+ of attendees. I was not there. Jimmy said you made it down to the Cumberland.
It was jammed, Gary.
He says 200+.
Oh,
Yeah. It's Johnny well attended. I mean, I think that speaks well of Kate's role in the
absolutely
community.
It was. I had never known, but I had never known. It was like wall-to-wall people. It was very nice. I mean, a lot of people there, and it was. That's an interesting building down there.
Yeah. I've not been there yet.
Yeah. Well, Nino Burrito or whatever it is.
It's right above that, right?
Yeah. You come in like this door. You look like 2 flights of steps, but a lot of people. Yeah.
Good. Some new development opportunities potentially coming forward for the real estate collaborative. We hear more about that in the future. Tourism development program, grant activity, and business loan activity is very strong. Speaks well to the economic status here in the county. The
finance person who's replacing, more or less replacing Shelby, who left to go to a housing financing agency over in Harrisburg for the state. That person is going to start January 6th, so we're getting back up to full complement on important functions. There's no Jill, who's kind of the administrative side. Jill's not, she's leaving, so we're going to be getting a replacement there. That search has started, and let's see. Only other thing is recycling, and Jen sent me a summary. We passed 300,000 pound mark for 2019. They just passed that this week. Currently sitting at 302,758 pounds received in 2019. 3,409 customers. And for a total since the opening of 934,226 pounds. Obviously, I'm not doing this from memory. 10,170 customers, or customer experiences. You know, sometimes they're repeats, but that's a lot of folks. So obviously, demand has been proven in terms of the center. Moving on from there, they're currently working on the 2020 Household Hazardous Waste Disposal Program plans, and the 2020 DEP application for registration will be on one of our upcoming workshops in the not too distant future. The authority does have a meeting Monday night, and they're going to discuss the vacancy. John Thomas is retiring from the board, longstanding member there, and so we are in full search mode there.
Just got reelected.
I know, he's a busy guy, so he said it's time for him to move on and get someone else up to speed there. And John is a pretty old guy, so it's got to start.
He still looks the same.
He does, exactly. So I want people to report back to him that I described him as old.
I'm going to.
There you go.
So, he owes me money, so I can say what I want. So, but anyway, so they'd like that seat to remain a municipal government seat, particularly first-class township. I think there is some requirement that we have a municipal government representative. Doesn't have to be a full board member seated, but that's how they'd like to fill that seat. So, know anybody? They'd certainly be open to trying to recruit somebody there. That's everything I got.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryder. Agenda item 17, I'd like to report that executive sessions were held on the following dates in 2019: December 5th at 2:30 p.m., December 10th at 1:30 p.m., December 11th at 9 a.m., all regarding personnel issues, and December 9th at 1 p.m. regarding litigation. Agenda item 18, under other business, in your package, you should have a resolution that was placed in notice morning and provided to you. Since the Director of Public Safety will be temporarily unavailable for a period of time and unable to execute documents necessary for public safety to continue without interruption, I spoke to Keith and asked him if we could prepare a document naming individuals that Bob has named in here to handle certain aspects of the administrative portion and other activities related to public service, and also to make sure that we had a formal approval by you that public safety department personnel will be able to execute these documents on behalf of the Director of Public Safety. And this resolution would continue until Bob returns to his duties as a full-time employee of Cumberland County. So if you all are all right with that, we would need action requests today since it is out starting today.
Okay, is there a motion to approve resolution 2019-34?
So moved.
Second. Any questions or comments? Sandy, I see an incredibly small typo. Other than that, it's fine.
Okay.
All in favor? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
You need this text pen before you sign it. You want to fix? At one time.
All right, it's just one little word.
You can swap out the first page and fix the mark.
Yeah.
we have a signature page here.
You can pass all documents for editing along to certain there. Like format that report.
Okay, so if there isn't any other business to come before the board today, we are adjourned.